All right, next up, motivational speaker, all-around great guy, Mike Zagaris.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the two gentlemen who put this on. Jeff and Jason have done a great job, haven't they? And secondly, I have to tell you that it's a true honor to share the stage with both Dr. Shervani and with Lynn Dickerson. Dr. Shervani is a change agent. You know, as difficult as we all in the private sector think our work is, today to be a change agent in the public sector is an extraordinary achievement, and I think we're all be blessed to have him in our community. Also, Lynn has transformed the Gallo Center. She came to the Gallo Center and took this absolutely extraordinary public resource and in a way, you know, protected it and saved it for this generation, for future generations through her strong leadership. So it's really wonderful, and I feel great to be able to share the stage with these fine folks. I'm here tonight. I want to talk to you about what my family has done to navigate the waters over the last 70 years of turbulent economic times, this time, but also prior turbulent times. What we have found as important things to focus on, these things that have enabled us, I think, to both build and prosper as a family business. I would also like to touch on those intangible things that I think are really critically important in the success of any enterprise, things that you can't really put your finger on, but are sort of the genetic driving force behind making something move forward in the midst of all kinds of challenges and all kinds of stresses. In order to do this, I'm going to start with the beginning, if you will. Okay. And I do this for a very important reason. Our family story is very, very important to me, but it's no more important than your family story should be to you, or the family stories of others should be to them. But I tell you this because it's critically important, in my opinion, that we all remember where we came from. And what's sad about the last number of years is that we as a society, I think, became, participated in a group period of delusional reality where we lost touch of what was real and what was important. And in part because we forgot about the lessons that our elders were trying to teach us. And so I share these remarks with you tonight in the hope that everybody search through their own memory banks about their own histories and about where you came from and where your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents came from, and try to remember the lessons that these elders have taught. This is the village of Platania in the island of Crete, which is part of Greece. In the early 1900s, it was an extraordinarily poor village. This is one of the villages on Crete that my grandparents came from. All of my four grandparents were born on the island of Crete. To the best of my knowledge, they didn't even have shoes. In the early 1900s, the Union Pacific Railroad sent men to Southern Europe to conscript Southern European men to work in the coal mines in the United States because they needed somebody to mine coal and nobody else wanted to mine coal, so they would find these young men and they would conscript them to work for $1 a day in the coal mines. And so my two grandfathers were so conscripted and came to this country, and they ended up working in the coal mines. This is the mine shaft in Hannah, Wyoming, that both of my grandfathers worked in. And they came to this country and brought with them some things. Great wealth. They didn't have any shoes, but they had their Christian tradition, and they had the love of their Greek heritage. And they brought those with them. They didn't bring anything else. They had no money. They had no material possessions. But they did have a deep love in their faith and of their heritage. And I share this with you because both of those things still exist in our family and are continually reinforced in our family, and I think have something to do with the longevity of our existence as a family unit in business. Now, I heard a lot of stories about the experience in the coal mines as a child, and those stories are with me today. Those stories were stories like, well, when your grandfather broke his leg in the mine in a mining accident, they made him go to work the next day and every day thereafter because they wanted to make sure the government knew that they had no days lost to mine accidents. Or, well, they really didn't get paid in money, they got paid in script, and they had to shop at the company store. When they shopped at the company store, the company took stuff out of their basket and said, sorry, you can't have this food today, you can only have, some of it. These are stories that, were imprinted on my brain as a child and are still with me today, and I find those stories to be far more valuable than any gift I got at Christmas. And those aren't stories that are any different than the stories of so many of you in this room, if you would remember them or if they were told to you. And when my grandfather died in a mining accident in this mine shaft, at the age of 18, my father was required to go work in the mines because his family lived in a company house, and otherwise they'd be thrown out into the snow. So at 18, my father became a coal miner, and was a coal miner until he served in the Army in the Second World War. And so what, I remember distinctly was that these poor, illiterate Greek immigrants who couldn't read Greek, let alone English, came to this country, and they wanted to make sure their children did better than they did, and they wanted to make sure their children got an education. They couldn't read, but some of their children became PhDs, one a professor emeritus now from Stanislaus State. They couldn't read, but they saw the value of an education. Dr. Shabani talked about the importance of education tonight. As we sit here in Modesto, California, in one of the least educated parts of the United States of America, remember this statistic. We have a global economy now in the world. As we sit here, the Chinese people are spending 15% of their household income on the supplemental education and tutoring of their children. And we spend 2%. Because education today is not as important to an American family as getting the latest plasma TV or material possession that we lust after. And the people, these immigrants, saw and recognized the value of education. They had nothing, but they knew that if their children got an education, they could do better. So education was a very important force in the lives of these immigrants, and that notion has continued to play a major role in the evolution of our family's business. And I want to share with you, I think that everything we saw in the wonderful piece that Jason and Jeff put together, discussion of education as being critically important, I can't think of anything that any of us could do to help a young person more than to support them in pursuing their education. Other lessons were learned had to do with family. And it's all about, in my life, as when I was being raised, I was told all the time, stick together with your family. And every time there's been a major economic crisis, I've thought, thank God we're still together, working together. Because we can share the pain, and we can cover each other and work together. And I'm blessed to be able to work today, with my sister, my brother-in-law, every day to shape, build, and grow our business. And is it easy to stick together as a family? No. But it's important to stick together as a family, absolutely. And I would stress to you that, this building, think about this building. This is the Gallo Center for the Performing Arts. An immigrant Italian family that worked really hard to build a business. And not a business like I'm talking about here today, not my family business, but a world-class business. And they're still working. And is it easy? No. But they're together as a family. Oh, by the way, within the confines of the Gallo Center for the Performing Arts, we're in the Foster Family Theater. Another family that has stuck together to build a business. So, for those of you who are looking for a secret, I run into people in Modesto all the time. The great way to make a fortune in Modesto is to go and get involved in a vertical market scheme of some type or another. You may have run into some of these folks, and you might redirect their thoughts to things like, hey, how about working hard? Which came out of the experience that my grandparents had in the home. How about working hard? How about getting an education and skills? How about sticking together as a family? Those are pretty important things. Not this way of somehow having the easy way out, which is what I think a lot of people are still searching for. This is my dad in the 1960s. Paul and Zagaris, my father, started his practice here in Modesto in 1947. He was a partner in another little real estate firm, started his own firm in the 1960s. This is my dad standing in front of his office in downtown Modesto, where he and two other real estate agents practiced real estate in 1965. And I have to tell you that, what he accomplished was absolutely remarkable for a man who only a few years before was basically mining coal and was unable to get an education because he had to work in the coal mines. And what he gave his children was he gave his children all those important stories about growing up. He wasn't afraid to talk about the Depression, which leads me to what is it that drives certain businesses, particularly family businesses, to go forward? What is it? What is the chemistry? And I will tell you that it's not some high-level, fancy thought. Okay? Our family, I don't want to go back to living during the time of the Depression. I don't want to be hungry. It's that simple. And the only thing that will protect any of us from that possibility, in my opinion, is to have skills that are invaluable at any time. Anything can be taken away from you, but nobody can take away what you've learned. Our parents, both my father and mother, instilled in each of their 4 children not only to work together, not only to remember and honor their heritage and their religious background, but to stick together as a family and to work really hard. None of this should surprise anybody here tonight. None of this is some secret sauce. There is no easy way to do well in this world that we're in today. I run into people, there are people out there who actually are thinking that if they just hold their breath a little while longer, things are going to go back to the way they were. And they're not. This is our business today, just for those of you here. We have a fully integrated real estate services organization. Basically, we're moving towards what we might call a home services organization that combines real estate brokerage, both residential and commercial and agricultural brokerage, property management. We have our own mortgage banking organization, Scenic Oaks Funding, and we've just launched WelcomeHomeServices.com, which is an entirely new service. So we're working with many businesses and organizations throughout the Central Valley to help homeowners and help individuals identify very cost-effective services. These are all the businesses that we're in today with $1.5 billion a year in sales and 700 people associated with our organization. This didn't come through any kind of accident. It came because despite the fact that it was so tempting during the bubble years to get the big head, we still went to work every day. Well, it was so easy to think that, hey, we got it made, we realized that, the good times will pass. And so will the bad times. One of the pivotal decisions we made in the early 80s was, I don't know if there's so many young people here tonight, but the prime rate was over 20% in 1981. Mortgages on homes were 16.5% in 1981. 16.5%. And we had like 30 people in our organization, and I got together with my brothers and my sister, and we talked about it, and I said, we need to grow the business. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, you see light at the end of the tunnel? And they said, no. And I said, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So we're going to grow our business now because this is when everybody else is depressed. And for those of you in this room waiting for the good times to go out and strike out and do well, I'm going to tell you right now there's more opportunity today than there will ever be in the good times. When the good times come, anybody can do it, anybody shows up, and that's really not the time you want to go. You want to go in a time like this. You have to be contrarian all your lives and to do exceedingly well in whatever you choose to focus on. So I share these thoughts with you today because I really believe that a lot of these things are very basic. Number one, we should never forget where we came from. We should never forget where we came from. And we should learn the basic lessons that our elders have taught us. And I have to tell you something, we should respect our elders. And in closing, this is one of the elders I respect more than anybody else, John Wooden. John Wooden was the greatest athletic coach in the history of collegiate athletics. His principles, his values, rock solid. You couldn't find anybody better. Anything you can read by or about John Wooden is something I would highly recommend that you do. This happens to be a book that where he talks about those that were his mentors. And I've talked tonight about being mentored by my father and through our family, but there are many others that have been mentors to me. This is a book about great mentors of John Wooden's and about those that he had mentored. Because the greatest gift you can give to a young person is to help them. When you think about the coming seasons and you have Christmas coming up and you think about your grandchildren and your children and so forth, think about how you can really help them. And it's not about buying them the latest toy. Think about how you can really help them. Read books like this. Focus on, passing on really important values. And I think you'll find that will enrich your life and those around you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, so there's a pen and a program in your bag. Usually, the day after this presentation, I'll get about 50 phone calls. Now, what was the name of that book Mike Zagaris was talking about? So, it's A Game Plan for Life by John Wooden. Great, great book, great read.